Hello, is anybody out there? I'm going live. I've gone live. I'm here. It is Saturday, May 24. Anybody out there? Somebody acknowledge I'm live? Just want to have a conversation today. Guess I should try to find out if I'm online. It says I'm online. Rick Miracle here. Hello, world. Anybody there? I haven't been live in a long time. Hello? Anybody there? Anybody there? I'm live. Is this thing working? Conversation today. Testing, testing. Must be somebody out there on the computer on Saturday. Hello? Anyone there? Testing, testing. Am I live? Am I live? Live streaming today. I'm checking my computer to see if I'm live. Anybody there? Testing, testing. I don't want to talk to the wall. Hello? Testing, testing. Am I live? I'm testing to see if I'm online. I'm here. Anybody see me? I'm here. Anybody see me? Up, I see myself. Up, I see myself. It's creating an echo. It's creating an echo. Wow. Nice little time delay. Wow. Nice little time delay. Wow. Nice little time delay. So does anybody get notified I'm live? So does anybody get notified I'm live? Does anybody get notified I'm live? Can you hear the echo? Can you hear the echo? Can you hear the echo? Wow, it goes time and time again. 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 One watching. I'm watching myself. One watching. I'm watching myself. One watching. I'm watching myself. One watching. Watching myself. All right. I'm live. All right. I'm live. All right. I'm live. All right. I wonder if my 1.19K subscribers. Well, guess we don't have an audience. Of course, it is Saturday. I can understand that. Just thought I'd give this a test to see if I could go live. But anyways, guess I'll make a video anyways. So here we go. Live streaming with Rick Miracle. May 24th, 2025. The title of today's conversation: Can spiritual entities communicate with humans? I was reading another edition of the Round Robin magazine from 1948. The volume 4, number 5. So I guess it was the 4th year they were doing the round robin. An investigation into spiritual and psychic research, as well as alternate healing and UFOs, aliens, the talk of the time in 1948, believe it or not. Well, think about 1948. It's just a couple years after World War II. Must have been some very interesting times. You're on the tail end of so-called 2 nuclear bombs that the world believes. True or not, that's not my conversation today. But the world believes it, believed it. Apparently the Japanese believed it. Decimated 2 major cities. So that would be, what was that, 1946? Or the latter part of 1945? I don't remember the exact date. So that would have been, let's say 46, then 47, 48. Only a couple years later, the world, I guess, is trying to normalize again. 1948. 100 years earlier, 1848, Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto. And apparently the Communist Manifesto, the Protocols of Zion, the Jewish Utopia program was well underway even when Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto in 1848. So that was that movement towards this messianic era, the return of the so-called Jewish Messiah and rebuilding King Solomon's temple for the 3rd time. Anyway, so yeah, if you just kind of think about 1948 and you go, oh, this must have been a very interesting world. And we know, that year or the next year and the year after that, there was a lot of fear mongering propaganda about nuclear war all over the planet. And a lot of, that's when the UFO and alien sightings really took off. And before 1948, since the 1900s, 1910, 1920, psychic phenomena and psychic research, seances and all that was very popular. People were sitting around tables, holding hands, and had some kind of spiritual entities knocking and talking, and plasma from visible entities appearing and disappearing. A whole lot of conversation you just don't get these days. Most people don't talk about it. But then again, they make a lot of movies like Ghostbusters and so many others. So in a way, it's the whole issue is well known to most people, but it's been animated or mind controlled on the masses of people to be marginalized, or even a comedy. Like I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched and The Monsters and the Addams Family and all those things when I was growing up. So that created the world we are now. But a lot of people probably don't take the time to think about these spiritual entities uh, being able to communicate with humans, and even more alarming is the fact that they probably can control humans without the human being aware of it at all. Controlling your mind, putting thoughts in your brain, controlling your actions, controlling your emotions. Is that possible? You see where this is going? So, anyways, I've been digging back in some of this old material to read, trying to see what people were thinking in 1948. I started out with the round robin issues for 1955 because that was the year I was born. And I kind of said, well, I want to know what they were doing and talking about the year that I came into this world. And then after I did those 6 issues for 1955, I said, I need to go back a little further. I mean, my parents were young people, and things were going on, and World War II was over. So I saw that Round Robin had the 1948 issues. So I started reading those a couple weeks ago. Then I came across this one article. So you can find, I may as well tell you this, you can search on the internet the Round Robin or the Borderland magazine, and on archive.org, and you should be able to find them. So they had the issues for 30, 40 years. They started out as the Round Robin, and then it switched to the Borderland. All right, so let me talk about the article I want to talk about for this video. So it starts out, the third person present. The third person present. So there isn't any kind of a lead into this that I can see. The previous page doesn't have anything that leads into this conversation. It says there on the top, experiments in spirit control. So apparently that's on page 5. This is page 2. So even the index doesn't seem to have this quite right. And then the next one is healing methods of the past and future. Excerpts from a lecture, a reply on the same clairaudient received. So a lot of people have received information by voices in their head or visions, even Nikola Tesla. And most of the famous people, scientists, philosophers, doctors throughout history, when I started doing research, they all had some kind of psychic, occultic background when they were young people, and their parents were usually some kind of involved in the priesthood or some kind of secret societies. So there is a family inheritance apparently when this stuff is done, that apparently the younger offspring, children, seem to pick up some of the abilities, whether it's a bloodline DNA genetic issue. I'm not quite sure, but I have a feeling that everybody is susceptible to influence by the spiritual realm, whether it be good or bad. So anyways, getting to the article and trying to bring this to you in a very coherent way, very understandable. It starts out with the third person present C was told by the Ouija to add them up. So these people were doing experiments with a Ouija board, which I do not recommend. There were apparently in Ohio, not too many years ago, I mentioned this in previous videos, but some young girls were playing with a Ouija board, again in Ohio, and they became possessed. I believe there was 3 of them. And they actually had to be taken away in straitjackets. When you become possessed, you go like insane mad. And I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video, I'm on YouTube. I got my channel back. So I'm not making any big to-do about it. I've been reposting some videos in my previous live streaming series of 2018, just to get the ball rolling, maybe to see if my 1,200 subscribers are still out there, or getting notices. So I also post all this on my BitChute account, which is almost up to 10,000 subscribers. I do believe, and many of my viewers, commenters, have said that there's without a doubt, and I believe I can prove it, that I've been censored, just like I was taken off YouTube in 2018, along with a lot of other people, because we were not in compliance with the terms of agreement, their rules. And it's YouTube, it's their platform, so they can make the rules. And so when I applied to go back on YouTube, they said, upon further review, your videos are not in violation of our guidelines. And so the 20 minutes after I appealed, sent the email, I was going to create a new YouTube channel. They sent back, your channel is live that fast. So I am experimenting today, making a live stream video. I lasted almost 2 months in 2018 before my live streaming capabilities were taken away. Apparently, I was talking about things that they didn't want me to talk about. But I don't want to be an exception here. A whole lot of other people were taken down in 2018. So anyways, a third person present, these 3 people doing an experiment, were playing with a Ouija board. So you got person A, person B, and person C. So person A was told to write 5 digits. So the Ouija board is telling him to write 5 digits. Apparently, the Ouija board was not telling him what digits to write. That's very important. And second person on the Ouija board, if you know how a Ouija board works, you relax your mind and you hold your hand on some kind of wooden guide on a Ouija board, and you let it move around to the letters, and it spells out words. So it moves your hands for you. So anyways, the Ouija board tells the second person, B, to write 5 numbers. So the first one wrote 16952. The second one, B, wrote 23044. Remember, they're just told to write it. And then they're told to total up those two numbers. And it comes to 3996. 39996. So the people there, this was an experiment that these people were doing with the psychic world and a Ouija board. So nobody thought anything strange in the fact that the total came to 39996. That being nothing mystical about that number, as 77777 would be to some people. So it didn't seem like a suspicious number. But then the spirit Brenza, so apparently these entities told their name with the Ouija board, and the person controlling the person's hand, when they relaxed it and let the Ouija board move it, his name was Brenza, Brengza, told C to write down 4 9s, which C did, and then to multiply them by 4, which he did. So the third person was told to write down 4 9s and multiply it times 4. And the total came to be 39996. So the third person was told to write down 4 9s, multiply it by 4, and it got 3996. And the first two people, A and B, were told to write numbers, not told what numbers to write. And 16952 and 23044, and then told to total them up, and it was at 39996. So one person was told the number to and then to multiply it, which came to 3996. The other two were told just to write down numbers and add them up, but they did come to 3996. So two things are happening here. The Ouija board gave them instructions to write down the numbers, and they did. They used their own brain to come up with the numbers. So how did that happen? The spiritual entity controlling the Ouija board must have been putting the suggestion in their mind to write down the numbers that came to them. Not only could it control their hand, but apparently, unbeknownst to them, the numbers they wrote down, they thought were their own choices, according to this article. It goes further into this, but you got to start somewhere. All right. We were considerably surprised that the result of the multiplication had come to the same as that obtained by the addition. Naturally, we took it all to be a demonstration that at the time we thought we had been writing numbers of our own random selection. So they thought they were writing, the first A and B thought they were writing down numbers of their own selection, as Brenza told them in the Ouija board. The spirit Brenza had in fact been exercising an unconscious control over one or two of us, possibly all three, so as to produce the predetermined result of 9999 times 4, or 39996. So I'm reading this, it's not so crazy yet. We considered it quite a proof or a miracle, and wondered whether Brenza controlled our minds or hands during the writing, or both. But we did not appreciate the full value of our little proof until later. So you're told by the Ouija board, it has also on the Ouija board a yes or no. So it has A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. So you can spell out words, or you can, if you ask it yes or no, it'll move your hand if you just relax it. Apparently, just some kind of ability to take over. Remember the story of Ohio, the 3 girls who were playing with it and went mad and had to be taken away in straitjackets by an ambulance was called. And apparently, a whole lot of people back then in mental institutions, psychic wards, which have been, if you ever watch any movies and stuff, what was a quite well-known thing. And the doctors and the psychiatrists, they thought the people just had some kind of a disease of the brain or something. But apparently, later on, the conclusions were that they were becoming possessed by some kind of demonic beings. But you see, a lot of people don't discuss this stuff these days, don't think about it. But what went on in 1948, 1938, 1928, 1886, 1805, 1848, Karl Marx writing the Communist Manifesto, who was Jewish and obviously into the occult, etc. You start to wonder, where did he get the material for the Communist Manifesto? Where did the people, the leadership of the Jewish people, having their Zionist meetings, get the documents for the protocols of Zion, studying the Talmud and the Kabbalah mysticism? That's some seriously diabolic material in those books. And they're the Zohar, and there's so much material. They got volumes filling up shelves like a lawyer's office of all these volumes of instructions to these occultic Zionist people who created the capitalist system we have today, and communism and the New Age and the plans for a return of the Golden Age and rebuilding King Solomon's temple so they can get back to sacrifices to please whatever deities. You see what I'm saying? The sacrifices to please some kind of deities, communication with deities that apparently taken over people's minds. Okay, let me read some more of this story. All right, so they considered it a proof or a miracle, but they did not appreciate the full value of what this situation really was about until later. Although we immediately repeated the experiment with the same result, our attention was in the fact distracted by the continuation of the experiment when the good Brenza told C to burn one of the papers and save the ashes and rub them along the forearm of one of the others. So the piece of paper that they wrote the numbers on, the Ouija board, Brenza, told them to burn it to ashes and rub the ashes on the forearm. What can these spiritual entities do? So C, remember there's three people, A, B, and C. C did this, carefully burning the ashes in a carefully washed ashtray. Looking at the flames, we wondered if the next step would be black magic or not. Then, as instructed by the invisible entity controlling the Ouija board, C nervously rubbed the ashes along the forearm of B. So C was rubbing the ashes on B's forearm. From the wrist to the elbow, lengthwise, there to our amazement appeared a large bold figures, the number 39996. So the same 39996 of the random numbers they chose and added up, and the same 3996 that C was told to take 9999 and multiply it times 4. When they took the piece of paper and burned it and put the ashes on the arm, there appeared on his arm in the ashes 39996. Now, how do you suppose the spiritual entity did that? So, what did the spiritual entity do so far? It told them to use their brain, randomly picking up 5 numbers, and then it told them 2 different people now, and then said to add it up. And they added 39996. And it told the third person to take 99994 nines and multiply it times 4. And it was 39996. And then it told them to burn the paper, put it on the forearm of C to put it on B, and 3996 appeared. So the invisible entity obviously controlled the mind of A and B when they picked random numbers, 16952 and 23044. And so he controlled their mind. And he also would see, with the 3 nines coming up with the same number, he also somehow miraculously wrote on the person's arm. So are the invisible entities everywhere right here? And so you got ashes on your arm, and some invisible finger, I suppose, could write 39996. So they get in your mind, they can write here, or they could be around us. A lot of interesting thoughts to think about. All right. A little excited, we got up from our chairs and tried to figure it out. So what would you do if you were playing with a Ouija board and this happened, and you were performing this little experiment, communicating with Brenza, and he told you to do these things, and you did them, and this was the result? Since there was no smart scientific amateur present to explain everything by the magic or hypnosis, even though they themselves, with all of their superior knowledge, cannot duplicate the experiment, we just naturally called it the work of an invisible fourth mind or spirit. And considering Brenza a mind superior to any of ours, we took him at his word when he said he had planned it all for our benefit. So apparently they were communicating with this Brenza before this experiment. There followed another little experiment with numbers, one which made us laugh. Brenza told C to write a series of numbers, which C did. But one of the numbers, the 7, was a little shaky. Brenza told C that he was going to teach him how to write a 7. He instructed C to multiply the series by 63, which C did, and the result was 777, 777, 777. So again, Brenza told C to write a series of numbers. He didn't tell him what numbers to write. When he was writing the numbers, and whatever they were, he was told to multiply that group of numbers by 7, and it came to be 777, 77, and 777. Several days passed, during which we all tried the experiment out on our friends, but no 2 friends nor anybody else could get the results of 3996 in the manner obtained above. They either got more or less, but never 39996. So they did this without the Ouija board on their friends. They had 2 people come up 5 numbers each and totaled them up, but it didn't work. We took that to mean that some sort of spiritual control had to be present in order for the 2 people writing independently of each other could get the 39996, and such was the case for when C happened to visit another operator not present. Turn the page. At first proof, they sat down to the Ouija and found that Brenza was again present and willing to oblige. So apparently they went to have another operator of the Ouija board, not the same operator as before. So apparently, whoever the psychic is, the operator, was not A, B, or C. They actually didn't have their hand on the Ouija board. They were giving the operator instructions and getting information. You read and go along, you learn as you go. And I might want to stop right here and say, my first initial reaction to this is this is all fake. This is some kind of fictional article. That's my first intuition. But then I've been a researcher since 2005, and I'm clearly aware of much of this stuff. I've made book reviews on psychic research societies, the Theophist societies, morals and dogma, all this stuff involving these nefarious groups with all of their black magics and sex magic and sacrificial magic and trying to destroy Christianity. And knowing, a lot of the occultic activity even mentioned in the Bible and the forces of the spiritual realm of heaven and the forces of the underworld, Hades or hell, whatever you want to call it. So this kind of spiritual reality is well known to people before this modern era where materialism has taken over and the spiritual component has been hidden. So if I give this a slight benefit of the doubt, which I sort of have to, because I've got so many books and I've read, this is my fourth plus six, my 10th round robin in the 1955 series and the 1948 series. I'd have to venture to guess probably several hundred of these magazines or articles I've read over the past 20 years. So I am aware of all this being, this occultic stuff being very real. And these numerology and satanic holidays with this crazy stuff happening and the intentional destruction of religions all over the world for the New World Order. So I had to put everything into context. So I'm not trying to preach this to people as being gospel. I'm saying it's food for the brain and the possibilities, the plausibility and the possibilities, the plausibility and possibilities, considering the probabilities, how likely is it true? And it's being written in magazine with thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of other articles and UFO and alien sightings appearing and disappearing. So much stuff that world does exist. And of course, I believe we're spiritual beings and we enter this world through the womb when a woman has a baby. And when these physical bodies expire, they get old, or they get terminated early, murder and sacrifice, disease, etc., accidents, then you exit this world. So we have an entrance and an exit, and we're here for a certain period of time. So before that time, what was the spiritual entity that's now me? Or where was it? Did it exist? When I die, where is it going? Or does it just expire? And of course, I believe it does not expire. And that's my culture. That's Christianity. That's what's taught in all religions. So again, you get back to the probability, the plausibility, the possibility. And you say, okay, maybe these people are telling the truth. Give them the benefit of the doubt. It's not going to change my life, but it is an interesting story. So I want to continue sharing the rest of this story. So I just want to make that little caveat there. I'm a Christian. I believe Jesus came into this reality and tried to teach us that we should love one another, was trying to change humanity. And apparently it angered some of the dark forces, the leadership of the so-called people who call themselves Jews, with their Pharisees and their Shehendrin operating out of King Solomon's temple, where they were doing sacrifices and basically treating poor people horribly bad, etc. So the spirit world in the form of Jesus came into this world and tried to get humanity to advance itself, but the resistance from the dark side was pretty great. They killed Jesus Christ, and I believe that dark side is still with us and responsible for the horrendous state of affairs since Jesus was crucified and before that, and for the things going on now involving all these things, including technologies like CERN and artificial intelligence, which the whole world is gravitating to. And so you think about the mind control of artificial intelligence, computers, and all of that. And then you think about this article and the influence these beings were having on the brain to come up with the numbers and to write the letters. So you could say they're using all this technology as a very advanced form of a Ouija board or other magic mirrors, like the cell phone, and the flat TV screens now. I mean, what was a magic mirror? It was a piece of glass painted black on the back, or a pool of water, and you looked into it, you could see this being talking to you, etc., etc. So that technology was always there for the occultists 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago. They make movies, they show you this stuff all the time. Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all? And then, of course, mantras and sayings, open sesame, abracadabra, numerology on all these dates. So, you start to see a greater probability, thus a plausibility, that this could be a true story. And if you put that into context with the intent of the people of our world right now, you're on some scary ground. You say, wait a minute, can they really be controlling people and them not knowing it? They right in that this little experiment, they controlled those two guys' minds that were just told by the operator to write down 5 digits individually, which totaled 39996. You see what I'm saying? So if it was real then in 1948, and it was real throughout history, if you know anything about occultism and witchcraft and magic and burning witches and killing of Jesus and the other religions, the birth of Muhammad and the creation of Islam and Hinduism and Buddhism and the stories of those deities. And you see the elephant deity with its arms crossed and the elephant trunk and the other deities and all of that. Shiva in front of CERN, the collider in Geneva, Switzerland. You see, you can't help but connect all this stuff. And Geneva, Switzerland is apparently the home base for many years for the Illuminati, this occultic group that kind of has all these secret members that become our leaders, like George Bush and the Skull and Bones, etc. So that was in Geneva, where they have CERN and the statue of Shiva out front. And also the home place for the story of Frankenstein. So you start putting all these things together, and again, the probabilities increase, making this whole thing plausible. And if they have this kind of control and communication with spiritual entities on the other side, and they have intentions for this Armageddon, world destruction, world enslavement, where Klaus Schwab Economic Forum says, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. You won't eat meat, you'll be eating bugs. We can see the world evolving around us in this direction right now, and pricing so many people right out of the ability to rent a house and survive, and homelessness increasing. So this is part of the apparent occultic secret society communicating with these evil entities plans for controlling this world. So when I'm reading this and I'm thinking about, if this is real, we know they're up to no good today. I mean, genociding entire populations. I mean, World War I, World War II, genociding all the people in Central Europe. It was insane. Nuking Japan. Two major cities that were bent towards Christianity. People don't know that. Big Christian churches and statues. And then that Jewish person on a video I just posted, kill all the Palestine people. Let's do another Dresden. How many people know about Dresden? If these occultist people did this, Dresden was on the eastern side of the German countries, a major city that really wasn't involved in the war, where all the women and children and elderly people and sick people went to escape the war. At the end of the war, they decided to decimate Dresden and carpet bomb it. For what reason? For some kind of spiritual ritual, human sacrifice, innocent people? Apparently, the more innocent and younger the victim, even for pedophilia, the more spiritual power they get. So, you got to wonder what's the appetite of this evil spiritual entities to be involved in all of this horrific activity in our world. It's just something a lot of people don't want to talk about or think about. And to some point, I agree. But here I am picking up the round robin reading this, and I'm going, wow, the plausible, probable, possible, what? So there's more here to the experiments that these people were doing. Okay. Miraculously written on the forearm of the unbelievable. We suppose that this last step was necessary in order to establish that a third and invisible entity was present during the experiments. Because although we could deliberate study set, we could by deliberate study, it's kind of cloudy writing here, set up a series of numbers that would add up to 39996. We could not. So it would take a little bit of effort for anybody to come up with different combinations to equal 3996. I mean, I could take 39996 and come up with 5 numbers and subtract them from 3996. Then I would know what the other number was. Anybody could do that. But that's not what they did. They were trying to randomly come up with it with their own minds. So had not yet been able to write numbers on people's, they have figured out no way to rub ashes on your arm and have numbers appear. Of course, other numbers and other symbols were written on the forearms of incredulous friends. But the mystery of how it is done still remains with us. So apparently, other psychic experiments have had numbers and designs appear. So apparently, these spiritual entities can do that. Now, again, I'm going to jump forward to 2025. If this was the communication and the capability of some kind of spiritual entities, and now we have these advanced technologies with quantum computers and super fast computers and a lot of involving a lot of crystals, crystal technology, transistors and everything. Are they opening up a doorway for the spiritual entities to have a greater control in this realm? the spirits Brenza, and apparently there was another one called Fine, Fine, and Winstone, who did it, said that they did it with their forefinger. So when they asked a spiritual entity, how did you do it? They said, we did it with our forefinger. So which meant that the spiritual entity was right there in this realm, but they couldn't see it. So you're rubbing the ashes on your arm, and the spiritual entities going over there writing in it. And you've seen things like this appear in movies, or, entities writing on mirrors and stuff. Occasionally, we would get even better and more impressive proofs. But since they were not duplicated, they are not here repeated. Nevertheless, after one of these proofs, one of the experimenters spontaneously began to write down rows of figures as follows. So one of the experimenters spontaneously, I guess just sitting there with his pen and paper, just all of a sudden took it upon himself to start writing down some numbers. So these are the numbers he wrote down. 357, 468, 3039, 875, 642, 531, 960, 123. And they totaled up 3996. Again, the entity is trying to prove that he does exist. And there's no, within this, what they were saying here, statistically, it's impossible that this could randomly happen. Rolling the dice, and how often you're going to get snake eyes or double sixes, unless the dice are rigged or something. So they were trying to figure out if this whole activity was somehow being rigged or how it was done. They couldn't do it because the spiritual entity was doing it. This was twice repeated, and each time with the same results. So I showed you 2 columns of numbers. As it was spontaneous, it provoked much laughter from C. So it was spontaneous. They weren't planning on it. And so the group of the 3 people were laughing about it. Imagine watching your third friend or second friend B doing this and then doing this. And they're just laughing. This is mysterious. This is crazy. Who took advantage of the opportunity to kid and frighten his friend into thinking that he was obsessed by spirits. So they were kind of joking or prodding their friend, you're possessed, you're possessed. Said C, the spirits have got you, my boy. You'd better stop or you'll be spending the rest of your days in an asylum, writing numbers on the walls and adding them up to get 3996. So like I said, back then, there were lots of people winding up in the asylums, mental institutions, and a lot of people suspected and tried to tell the other psychiatrists and doctors that these people were possessed. So if they finally figured it out, like the 3 girls in Ohio and many others, they get taken away in straitjackets playing with the Ouija boards and the occult. And again, another reason why this conversation is extremely important is this occult activity is continuing, increasing intensity. If you don't believe me, please go downtown and take a look around you and see the satanic symbols tattooed on people's bodies. Think about the mind control of these people spontaneously writing down numbers, all the people turning away from religions everywhere. And now they're going out getting demonic tattoos and are wanting to use drugs, young people, opioids, body piercings, turning into total freaks. They call themselves freaks. They create a TV program called Zombies. You see what I'm saying? The whole world may be caught in the grip of mass possession, and nobody even knows it. You getting goosebumps yet? Is it plausible? Is it probable? Is it possible? Yes, if this story is true, it's very possible. And they've been swaying people away from the foundation. Apparently, like attracts like, right? Like attracts like. So nice people like to live in nice neighborhoods. And of course, the freaks and zombies want to go live in the west side or the freaky neighborhood. People, birds of a feather flock together. So if so many people are deviating away from religion and family values and culture, and becoming rebels, the children everywhere, right? Children everywhere, even convinced in school that they may not be a he or a she, even though they can check their pants and they're he's or she's. Is there this mind control going on? They don't know about this stuff. They don't know. None of us know to what extent we could be influenced by some other force. And that's important. So it's an old saying, I'm hope I get it right, but know thyself. So I would suspect, and I've said this before in other videos, if you get strange thoughts, inclinations in your head, and let's say you're 50 years old, 45, 35, whatever, and you say, hey, I've lived quite a long time so far here, and I've never had thoughts like this. I've never thought that. I want to let you know that you're not going mad. You're not going crazy. You don't need to go to a loony bin. You don't need depressants, drugs, psychiatric care, counseling. Like attracts like. And if you take yourself away from the spiritual realm that protects you, we pray. That's why they have religion. That's why there's prayers, certain prayers like mantras, abracadabra, hocus pocus. That's what those prayers are for your faith and belief. But they want everybody to have fear. So fear opens up the door for these entities to take over. And I've studied a lot of psychic research and material, and the dark and dingy and drug, alcohol places, the worst places in back streets in London and other cities, and where the poorest people and the mentally ill and the drunkards hang out, where the highest cases of possession and insanity. So like attracts like. So if they create a world where everybody is in a low vibration, everybody is susceptible to this influence by these spiritual entities that apparently do want to take over and create a zombie apocalypse, a reality. All that from reading this thing about these people. And I'm putting two and two together and I'm saying, if this is possible, if this really happened, these spiritual entities haven't gone away. We know that they put their symbols on the dollar bill. There's a pyramid on the front of this, and the all-seeing eye, and all the skull and bones, and George Bush and John Kerry, and the politicians all working, involving in wars and killing, and have belonged to secret societies. So we know the controlling forces of this world. Again, my biggest point in this conversation, this influence, this control could probably take over anybody, and you need to be aware of it. What Richie from Boston says all the time, have the full armor of God, prayer, fast, choose the right living, the right thinking. It's all intentional. This is your weapon. Realizing the enemy, not also controlling us with psychological warfare and their crazy laws and goings on and fear accusations of more plagues and COVID pandemics and weather anomalies and climate change and World War III and economic destruction and racism and hatred. The fear opens up the door to these entities from the dark side, in my opinion. Love and faith and prayer in God closes the door and protects you. And if you're aware of this and you do get thoughts that are not your own, and you ask yourself, Well, this is crazy. This is an inclination, and that they can affect your body. They can affect your hormones. They can affect your impulses. They can affect your circumstances, creating a distressed situation so that you'll lose hope and get more fear and become susceptible to the dark side. Not trying to read too much into this article, but I was reading it and I thought about this other stuff, and I thought about people today, May 24th, 2025. How many people out there know that this is possible spiritual control? That there is a battle going on, as Alex Jones calls it, an information war. And that's what it is. And it's all prophecy. And even Donald Trump the other day said, we're going into the golden age. The golden age is old terminology by the occultists. When the pharaohs and the kings ruled the world with their kingdoms and thrones, and all the people were serfs and slaves that they could slaughter and send into war. That was their golden age. That's what they want to return to. If anybody disagrees with things I'm talking about, put something in the comment section. Got any serious material? Send it to rickmiracle@yahoo.com. I'm open. Do I want to believe that the spiritual, invisible, dark entities are not taken over, or it's not going to increase? What does biblical prophecy say? In the end times, the demons will be let loose. These evil spiritual entities will be let loose. And the door has never been more wide open, more fear, more panic. This was twice repeated, and each time with the same results. As it was spontaneous, it provoked much laughter from C, who took advantage of the opportunity to kid and frighten his friend into thinking that he was obsessed by spirits. Said C, the spirits have got you, my boy. You better stop, or you'll be spending the rest of your days in an asylum writing numbers on the walls and adding them up to get 3996. So this stuff, the spiritual entities controlling people, could drive people crazy, mentally ill. You don't know what's going on. And this, like I said, even in Jesus and the Bible, whether it's the Old Testament or New Testament, with prophets or seers and all that other stuff, and magical things happening for the wars and King Solomon's temple and the Ark of the Covenant, taking it into battle, opening up the lid, spiritual entities firing loose and killing people, plagues, millions, gazillions of bugs and clouds of gases killing people, screaming in the hallways and the houses, lakes and rivers turning blood red and everything, blacking out the sun. You see what I'm saying? This materialist world is what everybody's banking on. And a lot of people have abandoned the knowledge of the spiritual realm, or considered the fact that we entered it at birth. We live 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, and we leave. When you leave and you get to the other side, do you want to get there with your mouth open like, I didn't believe it. I didn't know this. I wouldn't have done what I'd done if I'd known all these things. I'm just saying, who would not want to know about our creation and this reality and right from wrong? But a lot of people would rather ignore it because they'd just rather just keep on moving on with all of the crazy things, insane things they're doing. All right, I've been talking for almost an hour. I usually make videos from 4:30 to 6, an hour and a half. And it doesn't really look like I have any visitors. I haven't got any comments on my chat thing. So I'm all alone, but that's okay. This is me experimenting with doing a live stream, and I may as well just do it by myself and make a video and kind of watch it and see how the equipment worked out and the camera and the microphone. It was pretty easy on YouTube to go live. It was very simple. Okay. Let's read some more about this. Frighten his friend into thinking he was obsessed by spirits. The spirits have you, my boy. You better stop or you'll wind up in a mental asylum. They'll be coming for you any day now. I'll lose a good man. So they were making fun of this one guy who just spontaneously wrote down the numbers. In defense, the other called upon the kidder to dictate half of the series of rows. Thus C did. He dictated 769-636-492-011. And once the other, at some distance away, wrote 210-361-507-966. The combined total was again 3996. At that, C stopped laughing and agreed that both possibly might be in the power of the invisible, but capable mind. So when they made it happen, the guy who was poking fun and laughing, when they called upon him to come up with some numbers, and it totaled 3996, he stopped laughing. He kind of freaked out. I've been possessed too. Again, so I'm reading this, and of course it did cross my mind. I mean, this is quite a piece of fiction. Could somebody think up this? But then again, beyond tons of this, thousands, millions of books and magazines and documents and stuff in the Bible and other religions and mystics and witch doctors and sorcerers and Kabbalah students, including Donald Trump, and all the things happening in our reality. A lot of people, you can't help but deny that some dark force has taken over this world and maybe been in control of it for a long time, maybe forever. When we get born into this world, I mean, how horrific was it during World War I? He called it the Great War. How horrific was it during the Civil War in the United States, where the soldiers and young people and families and children and gunshots and cannons were just killing each other, all controlled by these leaders who were into the occult, which may be under the influence because they were in the occult. And so they were susceptible to this influence of this dark side, the secret societies, things they can't tell you about. And so the secret societies and their spiritual demonic entities telling the leaders what to do with their armies, whether they're from the north or the south. And they got the citizens all being slaughtered in the Civil War. A lot of people are not aware of it, but when they had the Civil War in the USA, 1863 to 1868, they were having civil wars all over Europe too, especially in the Balkans and Romania and Ukraine area and in Georgia, where all the Jewish people had migrated after being exiled from Western and Central Europe for 300 years, the Inquisition. 300 years, the Jews were pushed out of Britain and all these German countries and France and finally out of Spain and Italy. And they were free. And all the Jews had gone from Georgia, Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria, up to Poland. They called it the Pale of Settlement, all in this occultic stuff. And they were causing a lot of disturbances with the continuation of their occult activity and human sacrifices for their festivals and rituals. Russia stopped them at St. Petersburg, and that was the line. So they were boxed in from the German countries to Russia for 200 years, and they took over and gained a lot of wealth and power. That's a beautiful territory and location, strategic. So they got a lot of wealth and power, infiltrated Britain and France and caused revolutions and took over the governments with people that they had influenced. The whole masses were deceived yet again. Back to this story. So C stopped laughing. He was laughing and poking fun at one of the other people, and he was told to do some numbers. Bregus, who seemed to be bent on demonstrating that he could do as he pleased with blind, stupid mortals. So here's this spiritual entity behind the Ouija board, thinking he could do as he pleased with blind, stupid mortals. I know people watch my videos. Should we be blind, stupid mortals? All right, I see somebody's here. 144, welcome to this conversation. Nice to have somebody here. Am I loud and clear? I see your smiley face. Thank you. All right, let me continue with this conversation. I'm talking about the plausibility, probability, likelihood of spiritual possession of people without their knowledge. I mean, everyday people being influenced by spiritual entities. We all know there's a lot of bizarre things going on in the world. And you can go downtown on the city streets, like I said earlier. Look at the way people are, the exterior, their demon tattoos, serpents, all this, the look of the humans everywhere. They look like zombies. Men like gods, blind and stupid, does describe a majority of humans. So I think for the people who watch my videos, I believe the people are going to believe that the conversation is probably pertinent to the reality we are in, and people need to consider the possibility of the destruction of religions and the coming new age and the whole transgender, transhuman, artificial intelligence, changing the whole world agenda has got to have something to do with the spiritual plans for the golden age and a huge depopulation, human sacrifices. All right, back to the story. So C stopped laughing when it was done to him. And Bregus, the invisible entity controlling the Ouija board, was trying to demonstrate that he could do as he pleased with blind, stupid mortals. He had triumphed 3 times in a row. Some days later, another friendly spirit, Winston, came to the experimenters. Winston suggested that both experimenters start writing at the same time, thus writing their numbers simultaneously, which they did. So C, remember there's 3 people, experimenters, A, B, and C. C wrote 4792713253. The others simultaneously wrote 520726671. So how many digits? That's 3, 6, 9. So they each wrote 10 digits simultaneously, choosing with their own mind, communicating with the spiritual entity with the Ouija board. And it shows here what they did. They totaled them up. There's the numbers. Again, consulting the Ouija board, they were told to add them up. So they added up the first number, second number, like they have here, and it comes out to 999999999. So again, as before, they thought they were choosing their own numbers because the Ouija board said, just come up with 10 numbers, each of you simultaneously, and then add them up. So was the spiritual entity controlling their mind? Immediately, both saw the obvious explanation. All the time that one of them had been writing numbers, the spirit present was making the other write the same numbers that the resulting pairs always added up to nines, as can be seen above. It is possible, of course, that the spirit dictated to both minds simultaneously, or what is more probable, first the one and then the other, separated only by that brief interval of time necessary for the spirit to know which one of them had written already. So when the spirit is controlling the mind, it probably only takes a flash to put the number in your head. And so you start writing, and it went to the other individuals, or maybe there was more than one spiritual entity, or maybe it has enough power and mental capacity like artificial intelligence to dictate the numbers at the same time. Who knows what's in the from coming from the spiritual realm? It is possible, of course. Anyways, I said that. Necessary for the spirit to know which one of them had written, or to read what one had written and then dictate the complement, or so that both, so they were trying to figure it out, seemed to be writing simultaneously. Whatever the procedure, pairs of nines always resulted once the spirit was willing. So when you learn how to open yourself and allow control of this spiritual entity, you don't even know it's going on, and you're just spontaneous. You start writing down numbers. At once we went to work to check out all pairs. Examining the first numbers written, we found that while A wrote his top row, 3597, B wrote 6402, which add up to 999. And then A wrote his second row, 2467. At the same time, B wrote 7532, which add up to 999. And so on to the end of the series. When we asked the spirit Winston if that was correct, he said, or wrote, "You smart boys figured out that one, but let's see you figure out how to write the numbers on the arm." So that they're telling the spiritual entity behind the Ouija board how they think it was done. And the spiritual entity says, "Okay, you figured that out. Then how do we put numbers on your arm?" That's it precisely. Let the smart boys figure out how to write numbers on the arm. Perhaps one day they will. So for spiritual entity, when you rub ash on your arm, can take his finger, you can't see him, he's invisible, and write the numbers on your arm. Back in 1948, do you think the spiritual entities have gone away? All the stuff that's in the Bible and all the stuff in the other history books and manuscripts and textbooks and religions, Mexican shamans, Carlos Castaneda, going to Peru, taking ayahuasca, having visions. Does anybody believe that this spiritual reality has just gone away because we're all materialistic now? Religion's passe. It's no longer needed. Yeah, they don't want you to have the armor of God and the protection to defend yourself or the knowledge of what's going on. How many people are embracing this cultural change that's so bizarre? It's unbelievable, and it's so horrific and depressing. So fear opens up the door, and faith and belief closes the door. So, once you understand that this other realm is probably the more real realm than this materialistic physical realm, you make different decisions with your brain. And if you have thoughts in your head that you don't think they're your own, you might be absolutely correct. All right. Mere chance or accident may give isolated nines, but when consecutive nines are obtained, one naturally suspects a plan or a mind whatever that may be. In the first experiment, there were 16 pairs of nines, followed by another 16 pairs when it was repeated. So they did this many, many times. These people were told just to come up with numbers, and you got 36 different times, and they all come up to 9999 when they're picking their own numbers. But that was bettered in the spontaneous experiment when 12 pair were produced 3 times in a row. That totaled 36 pairs. So help me God, the guy writing this article says. This is 1948. The question naturally came to us, as it now does to you. What is the probability of getting so many consecutive nines from adding up numbers at random, as we suppose we were doing, and as would have been the case if there had been no spirit control present? So if there had not been them experimenting with the Ouija board and getting the instructions from this entity calling himself Brenza, and later on Winston, what person, what group, anywhere, anytime could come up with 36, 48, all these combinations of numbers, randomly selecting them, writing them down, all totaling 9999? It couldn't happen. Fortunately, that probability is easy to calculate, and it will be well worthwhile for the serious student of psychic science to trouble himself to follow through the arithmetic until he understands it, if only to see how mathematics may be applied to psychic science as it may to any other science. By mathematics is meant here precise arithmetic. By science is meant accumulated, precise statement of verifiable fact. So if one writes down a series of numbers, like the following telephone numbers, and then adds them up in pairs, you do not always get 999s, as you see. So if you just write down several numbers in a row, you're not going to get 99999. In that series of 18 pairs, there are only 2 which add up to 9. So if you just randomly had 3, 6, 9, 10, 12, 13, 15, 18, if you just wrote 18 numbers and 18 numbers, 2 times, you got 9 there and 9 there. So if you just wrote down 18 numbers and 18 numbers, you wouldn't get 999. Anyway, so they did come up with the probabilities of this happening. And I don't even know what this number is. 1 over 100, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 12 times 3, 36, 37, 38. 1 in 38 zeros under 1. That's a huge probability. It couldn't happen without using the Ouija board, communicating with the spiritual entity. And again, I'm not trying to say that this is a fact, but again, with my background and all the research and videos I've made and all the books I've gone over and all the things I see clearly in our face with all the occultic realm and the skull and bones and George Bush and the killing and the wars and all the control and the secrets, the probability that these guys were doing these experiments and were reporting correctly seems kind of more likely than not. Therefore, the readers who are not troubled by spirit control may try a very long time before they will get 32 nines consecutively from 32 pairs. Therefore, the probability that we really were controlled by a spirit or invisible mind exterior to ours and able to control ours is very high. So I don't even want to get into the fact that AI is in every home right now. Even me, even if I don't use it, my cell phone is sitting there. It does have that Corona entity you can turn on and talk to. And then, of course, people have Alexis and Siri and all this stuff. So apparently this mysticism AI apparently is also, has been reported by many people, somehow tuned in to this invisible realm, and another dimension, if you will. And they have intentions for this realm, one of them being depopulation and then control. So the possibility, probability, it is in fact the inverse of the numbers. So we know the probability. While writing the numbers, we thought we were writing them from our own random selection, where we're not conscious of any internal or external influence. So, that's very alarming. And again, like I say, how many people today could be under the influence? How many people watching this video have had random thoughts in their head or actions or things, and they have said to themselves, that's not me. Why did I do that? Had freaky things happen. And I'm saying it's going to increase. Like in the end times prophecy, the spirits, the demons will be let loose. And with AI and this other control and people surrendering to it. And so if you're conscious of it and you do get these thoughts that are normalized with TV programming and radio and songs that are banging in your ear, in your mind, we're all being mind controlled, retuned, redesigned. And it's been going on for numerous generations. And if you're older like me, you can see it and it's just kind of bizarre. But how many younger people today that are completely unaware of it? They think that I'm archaic and I'm crazy. Because, and I see them dressed up and you can't tell what they are. And in the battlefield, in the workplace, in society, in communities, and everywhere, children with their parents and people, all controlled by this exterior force with all these entities and secret societies and billionaires and gated communities controlling our world, controlling communication, invisible microwave radio signals, tracking all of us, monitoring all of us. It's a big, gigantic controlling machine. And I'm trying to say it's also tied in with the spiritual realm. And not from a higher realm, a higher frequency, but from a lower realm, which should be obvious to anybody, a lower frequency of more of fear and hate and greed and envy, viciousness among people, losing compassion and love and care for one another. Yay or nay? Okay. We are not all people, but the possibility is open for all people who are persistent and patient to prove the above results. It is too late to disprove them. We had our proof, our calculations were right. Recently, when we asked Brenza for more proofs, telling him that we intended to write this up for the public, he wrote, now you are getting like Garland and apparently there was a Garland Hamlin, author of The Mystery of the Buried Crosses, who wanted more and more proofs. So there have been other people in history communicating with the spiritual realm and have obtained wealth or material secrets and all that. And of course, they were more demanding from the spiritual realm. We want more, we want more. And they created whole religions, the Mormons and Joseph Smith finding golden tablets with writings on them because he's communicating with some kind of entities, and all these other cults. And Ron Hubbard, Aleister Crowley. I could go on and on. John Dee, the magician. That's what the Kabbalah, those rabbis sitting there with the books, and they're studying their whole life. They don't work like you or I. All they're doing is they're bent on this spiritual communication from apparently a satanic force that says, hey, you're my guys. You're my chosen ones. This is what I want you to do. You got to go out there and do this bad thing to all these other people. And if you do not do what I tell you, like it says in the Old Testament Deuteronomy, I'll destroy you. This is plain English in Deuteronomy and Numbers and Levites. I think it's 5 books that all this is very, very clear. I made a bunch of videos on Deuteronomy, 3 to an hour and a half, reading every word, and you can see the story. Where do you think the power came from? The Ark of the Covenant and all this other mysterious stuff in the Bible, in the frequencies and vibration where the trumpets took down a whole wall, etc. The Bible's full of this stuff. And a lot of other occultic books. They make movies about it. They share it all. This shouldn't be a surprise to people. I'm saying it's more diabolical than people can imagine. Okay, we got 4 more minutes. I'll try to read the rest of this page. During the above experiments, that is, before and after, we had many practical examples of spirit control over ordinary people. You see what I'm saying? I think it's the mind control and the brainwashing and the changing of our reality, the culture, allows this to go beyond. It's exponential. And I think it's going to get more bizarre all around us. And it would behoove people to be aware of it. And the armor and the tool you have. If the evil spiritual entities planning and wanting control of the human bodies, if because of ignorance and fear and susceptibility, what's the opposite of that? Go for the defense. Talk to God, believe, have faith. Look, have no fear at all. Become invincible. Spirit control over ordinary people, unconscious to themselves. Money that we thought we would never be paid was finally paid. So people into this black magic. Employers spoke the exact words that we had previously been revealed to us. Spiritual things happening. Unusual meetings took place at unusual places. The very nature of these proofs makes it very difficult or impossible to calculate the probability of their reoccurring or occurring normally and naturally. We would have to be articularies in order to make such calculations, which we are not. Nor are there any tables for them. Nevertheless, we are convinced that we have mathematical proof that strong, exact, and fairly sustained spiritual control is obtainable even under laboratory conditions. 1948. Where do you think they're at today? And in ordinary business offices, therefore, the probability that crimes and good deeds, insanity and sound mind, as well as love affairs and hate affairs can be and often are produced by the influence of minds external to our own. 1948 document. All the crazy things happen in your life, coincidences, surprising things, surprises, are external forces at play. Is it possible? Probable? Is it plausible? Is it more likely than not that this is actually the superior realm to this materialistic realm? Influences of minds exterior to ours, external to ours, and invisible to us. It is probability which the careful psychic worker must take into account. With experience, he may be able to judge the probability with a fair degree of accuracy. And I can tell you firsthand that when people say I shouldn't do this, but when I was learning how to find water with a stick or a pendulum, and sometimes I would ask the pendulum questions, I would get answers that I said, that doesn't seem like the right answer. So then I would say to the pendulum, in Jesus of Nazarene's name, is that a correct answer? Is that the truth? And it would give me a shake on its own, a counterclockwise no. And I found out when you communicate with the other world, whatever communicates to you is lying to you. And this is even taught in all these books I've gone over. How many books have I gone over? All these dowsing books. The American Dowser, 2002. I've got a case of these. American Dowser. And it teaches in here, you always have to test the spirits. Look at these books. This is a lot of knowledge here. Divining the primary sense. Unfamiliar radiation. The secret power of the crystal pendulum. How many people are into crystals and meditations and yoga? Do I need to really ask that? How many books? Locating underground water. How many people using it to find lost people and criminals? The police do. So again, the probability, likelihood that all this is real. One more thing I'll talk about. I went on the line before I made this video really quick. And I just typed in the rise of Satanism. I got a ton of results. A ton of results. Just type in Yahoo search or whatever you use, the rise in Satanism. I got the rise of Satanism in America, where numbers don't actually. Satanism in the United States, a brief history. The rise of the occult in the 1960s. Satan is getting hot as hell on the American pop culture. Listen to the songs. Satanism and devil worship. So this whole video is about spiritual communication and control, unbeknownst to the operators, telling them to pick random numbers, and they do. Used to be when you did searches, they gave you a number of the total results. I don't see that. So the second document I looked up, religions are outdated. This is common knowledge now. Religions are outdated. Is religion primarily out of date and old-fashioned? Open forum, is religion outdated in the 21st century? Christian Smith, why religion went obsolete. You see what I'm saying? They're getting everybody out of religion, convinced everybody that it is obsolete. There's a whole lot of results here. This is absolute proof. So people's belief in religion is plummeting. Satanism is rising. And the other one I looked up was demonic possession on the rise. And I went back there and you selected the thing here. It says a differential diagnosis of demonic possession, psychology. Why are exorcisms on the rise? A differential diagnosis of demonic possession. The centuries-old practice of exorcism is on the rise. Go on your computer, just search this stuff. What demonic possession is really like from the Vatican-trained psychiatrist says demons and demonic possession are on the rise. The neuroscience of demonic possession. So there's a whole reality taking place along with AI and the whole changes in the world and the separation of society, pricing most citizens, middle class, poorer people right out of it, homelessness increasing and desperation and fear increasing, which will allow more possession, spiritual control, and probably completely unbeknownst to the person who's being spiritually controlled, creating activities in these people like Manchurian candidates where they're doing things they don't even know why they did it. All right, so that's the end of this video. Let's see what comments I got here. Thank you for your comment, Stefan. Men like gods. The Joseph Smith family were using dowsing rods to find treasure. Some say that is how they happened to get up on the golden tablets. So everything I've been telling you in this video can be confirmed. People watching this video know stuff. The problem I have is what percentage of people are aware of this possibility of spiritual control? And if they did have thoughts in their head, greed, sexual perversion, whatever, homosexuality, thoughts they never had before. Would they start questioning themselves? Would they think they're going mad? Would they follow their inclination and think to themselves, I really want to do that? Did they not know? Can people become susceptible? I just showed you that religion is obsolete. They've taught people. And you can talk to people, and most people will tell you that. And the president recently said, we're coming into the golden age. People don't even know what that means. What was the golden age? There are definitely non-material entities coexisting with the material world. Blind and stupid does not describe the majority of humans. So thank you, Stefan, for your comments and watching this. Go back and watch it from the beginning if you want to get all the things the experimenters did initially. But I was just trying to prove that the spiritual component to this changing world is real, and a lot of it is very evil. And so a lot of people will do things they would never normally do, not even know why they're doing them. And so with waking up and being aware is probably the most important thing to get out to people everywhere. But as we know, with sky spraying and vaccinations and cancer and economic difficulties, all this stuff is planned and it's a deception. And the threats of World War III and all this other stuff, it's all manipulation, and the masses are all susceptible, falling for it everywhere. The only thing we can do is be thankful we can at least have a platform to communicate, and for other people to, don't give me a whole lot of credit. I'm reading a 1948 magazine. I'm going back in time. I get the thing to talk about. I'm reading it and I get to that section. I said, oh my, that is very interesting. How many of us know that the influence external to our own can control our own thoughts, how we're being led like a Pied Piper, not even know we're being led down that path. Anyways, one more note here from Stefan. Enjoy the rest of the day, Rick. I didn't know you are still live in WNC, but it's a beautiful day out today, a good day for a walk. Yeah, I've been on BitChute since YouTube terminated my account. And on the 20th, 2 days ago, I saw where I was going to create a new channel on YouTube, because I've seen other people doing stuff on YouTube that couldn't be done before. So I thought, why don't I go back on there? But I saw a little icon that says you can file an appeal for it had my last account name. So I was very pleasant and nice and said, hey, can I get my account reinstated? I don't can talk about hate and stuff like violence or anything. And I said, thank you for your time. And 20 minutes later, I had my YouTube channel back with 630 videos that were there. Luckily, I had them on hard drives. There's probably some stuff there that I didn't have. And I've been going over it. It's very interesting. So I'm back, and I thought I'd make a little test drive on the live streaming thing, like I did in 2018 and lasted less than 2 months when my live streaming capabilities were terminated because apparently my topics were a little bit too hot. So I wonder if the powers that be want this conversation to be out there and people to be aware that the dark forces definitely are taking over and using AI and other technologies and Wi-Fi and 5G and drugs and everything else and economic and other fears and propaganda to sway us and lies in the media. These people are evil. Those people are evil, promoting Black Lives Matter and white hatred and those evil, hateful Christians and stuff. You see how the evil's all being normalized, and so many people are falling for it and going along. And I need to end this video, so thank you very much for watching. Rick Miracle reporting.